Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall. On the other end is Mike Challis, Magic Mike. This is going to be a regular thing, guys, if you haven't noticed. It's pretty much me and Mike now. This is the show. And I apologize. Someone reached out to me. I say someone, I'm going to give him a shout out. Dom, who Mike, you also know. He
Yep.
came to our latest Team Revive get together, which is a good segue to something we're going to talk about. But he reached out to me and was like, oh, every time the Improvement Season podcast, I think it was the ending music goes out. It might have been the music that comes in, but I think it was like the outro music. He was like, every time that goes out, it gets me pumped. And I was like, might not have that anymore because of, as I said last time, there's been some changes to editing and putting together the podcast. So yeah, we just basically get right into the thick of things and then we'll say bye and there's no music there anymore. So I apologize, Dom, and anyone who loved that music, but maybe I'll find some and I'll get it put in there. But at the moment, it's not present.
Well, I was going to say the good news is we could find even better music potentially. So with every door that closes, another door opens.
Oh yes, that's nice. That's another saying, just like silver linings. I really appreciate those things. But how are things on your end, Mike? You're having some technical difficulties, but you've had a day of being sat at your computer, really.
I have. So yeah, as probably people who know me, technical difficulties aren't a hard thing to happen really. Sometimes it's the most basic things, but I'm well. Like I said, Thursday it's always my online coaching day, so it's always a really nice just switch up in my routine from being in the clinic to coming and working from home. I really appreciate that and just appreciate kind of having clients and checking in with them. So yeah, it's been a great day.
A Friday's also check-in day for you,
Not at the
or they?
moment. So they're
Okay.
a kind of a mixture really between being in the clinic, but also I try to interweave any online physio consultations as well. And, if there's any client consultations as well, I'll try to pop them into a Friday as well.
So you do four-ish, 3 solid days at the clinic and then one kind of like a bit 50-50. Yeah.
Exactly. Because it's kind of like at the moment, I wouldn't say I have enough clients to have a full day, but equally, so I can make it a bit of a blend of everything to sort of
Yeah.
justify and make it worthwhile.
It's a great position to be in. That's how I started online coaching, was I slowly reduced my one-on-one hours in the gym. I was an in-person PT, and if you can do that and the place of work is happy with you doing that sort of thing, it's the best place to be. Whereas if you have to, I don't know, try and almost run 2 jobs at the same time, that's real tough.
Very stressful. I know, again, friend client of ours, Rob, I know he kind of does that as well. And, it's always hard. It's a juggling balance because once you get to that maximum sort of your limit as such, it becomes quite a mental stressor sometimes. And it's hard to know when you can have that cutoff, so sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith, don't you?
Yeah, it is actually really tough because it's not just the client check-ins, it's then the ongoing content production. And I think some people get into this situation, I definitely did in the past, where I kind of post about like testimonials, client results, and coaching. But then once I got to like a good number of clients, I was like, I just chill on that stuff. And then it was like, oh, now I've had some client drop-offs. I should do that again. It's like there has to be this concurrent, continually letting your audience know there's coaching available, because you might have ample clients this week, but if 10% of those drop off in one go, 20%, it can happen, as we all know. Or if something like, I don't know, a lockdown happens and people's situations really change rapidly, suddenly you have to kind of manage that too. So yeah, there's pros and cons to being self-employed and having that, but yeah, it's a lot to juggle and go with. But you're right. I think at some point you just have to decide to take the plunge, if especially for someone like Rob, who has a lot of things pulling
Mm.
on his resources, basically, in terms of life.
Yeah, it's kind of like sometimes what they say about work-life balance. Some people say it doesn't exist, some people say that it does, and there's probably a happy medium for everybody, but it just exists on a different level for everybody.
Absolutely. I think about myself and I'm just like, well, like it's a good I feel comfortable with my balance, where basically from I work pretty much all day apart from the gym time, which you could argue it's semi-work because it's like I have to be a bodybuilder, right? I have to kind of put myself out there in some sense, but obviously it's not work. And then I have a cut off in the evening from like 7:30 till 10, and that's like my chill time. And then the weekends are mostly off. I'm not great at
Mm.
not, but similarly, it's not like doing work on the weekends. It's normally like I kind of enjoy having that time. Some people they'd need that complete break. So, but then there could be a sort of, and you're probably not too dissimilar from me in that regard because you're a bachelor and you haven't got kind of the demands of like children or dependents or
Mm.
anything like that. So it can look very different for a variety of people.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually. So on a Sunday, I spend probably an hour or two just going through the week ahead in my clinic diary and, my diary in general. And some people say, oh, why are you working on a Sunday? Well, actually, it's a stress relief for me because I go into Monday knowing that actually I'm not sort of, I know what's ahead of me and I've kind of planned it's almost like meal prep in a way. Sure, some
Yeah,
people in the moment might think, oh, why are you meal prepping? It's boring. But ultimately it saves you time in the long term and therefore it's a stress reliever. So yeah, but different strokes for different folks.
I remember when I did I think it was actually my first job out of uni, and I had a interview, and he was basically trying to get me to do, I think it was a VLOOKUP for Excel, and it's a formula on Excel, and basically what he was saying is it's really great because it might be hard work initially to learn how that VLOOKUP goes, but you work hard now to be lazy in future. It saves you
Mm.
time in future, basically. And that always sung true to me, where I'm like, I like the idea of working hard in the short term to then make my life easier in future. So it's very much like meal prep and planning out your week, those sort of things. I completely agree. And meal prep, everyone will be able to relate to that one. I remember the only time I really properly meal prep was in peak week, where I'd cook like, because I knew exactly what the meals were going to be. I'd just cook them all and have them ready. And I was like, oh, it's so nice just to go to the fridge and put it out on my plate and have it there. The thing is, most of my meals that I have on a day-to-day basis are like, the meal prep is it's not too different from just putting it out of the fridge. It's like, well, I cook an omelet. Like it's
Yeah.
not that much hassle. So
There was like we could probably go on like endless analogies with this, but another thing you made me think of was how some people during the work week they might wear very similar clothes. So there's not that kind of you're not wasting kind of mental energy deciding like, oh, what am I gonna wear and blah blah. It's just like, nope. They say that's what Steve Jobs did. He just had black polo top, black
yeah,
chinos or whatever, and it was like that's what he wore, and it just saved him mental energy for the rest of the day. And again, that's like a simple thing. If sure, it might not be the most varied things that you cook for your meal prep or whatever, but hey, it's like you just get it out, eat it, and you go on your day, and then you can save
yeah,
the rest for the rest of the day.
yeah. I'm pretty samey in terms of the clothes I wear
Me too.
because it's basically gym kit through the week, and then I get into my pajamas after a bit of a shower in the evening, like that.
Me too.
I never actually wore pajamas till it was basically prep caused that, to be honest, because I get too hot when I'm actually in like deep off season. I'm too hot for anything. But yeah, in prep, I was freezing, so I was wearing like all the pajamas. And what was I going to say? I do enjoy though on the weekend when especially on a Sunday when I don't train, I get to, because I like my fashion to some extent. I'm not like a fashionista or anything, but I like wearing nice clothes and kind of dressing up a bit. So I do like those opportunities, probably similar to, yeah, you have your meal prep, but maybe on the weekends or one of your meals through the week, whatever. It's a bit more of a, like, pick your poison, spend a bit more time, make it a bit more different, and kind of you get again your balance, whatever suits you.
Yeah, definitely. And you made me think of something, but I can't think of the right word. It's not like I can only think of the word tradition or whatever, but it's not like a routine. It's not like a tradition. Oh, that was it. So we all have our little rituals. So it might be like on a Sunday, your ritual is, oh, you might wear something nice, something a bit fashionable that you feel good in. Like you might go out for like, a meal with Charlotte or whatever. And for me, kind of, again, it might be a similar thing. Like I might have my ritual of in the morning, have my cup of coffee. I might do my notes and then like meal prep and stuff. And it's like, we all have these little rituals and they actually add an element of enjoyment to a certain extent. And I think it's good for us to have little rituals like that just give us a little bit of enjoyment and anchors and things.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, we have this Sunday is going to be a bit different for us to talk about
Yeah,
that, I guess, initially. Well, we probably can't talk about it too much. It'll be better for next week to talk about it more
true.
because we're having something quite different because we're actually going to both of our first Comic Cons.
Mm.
So I think we mentioned it maybe on another episode. So if anyone is there, definitely reach out to us. Let us know that you're going to be there because that'll be interesting. But we're going to be over there on Sunday and then go to Uzumaki Ramen,
Yeah,
the
so
restaurant.
excited.
So I have been there before once, but they've added loads of artwork to the walls, and I never
Ah.
got to go to the. We'll probably be anime merched out, if that makes sense, because they
Yeah.
have a little shop in the restaurant. I didn't get to go in. I haven't been in that, which I did want to go and like peruse and have a look. So yeah, I'm excited for that one. It's going to be. Did I tell you I actually looked up? um, do you know Saitama from One Piece? I think I might have mentioned not One Piece, One Punch Man. Sorry.
No, I don't know Saitama.
Okay. Basically, uh, you'll enjoy it. It's kind of rips on all the traditional animes. Essentially, it's a bit of a joke of an anime, but it's nice. But he is bald. So if you ever see someone say, "Oh,
Ah.
Steve, you're One Punch Man" or Saitama now, that's why, because he's kind of bald and kind of jacked. Sometimes not. It depends how he's being drawn. But anyway, I looked
Mm.
up outfits. I was like, "Oh, we could dress up for it." The other thing, you can buy like a Katsuki like cloaks actually pretty cheap and they look pretty decent. Like you could dress up as like an Akatsuki member, so that's quite
Oh,
cool.
I saw you could dress up there, but I wasn't sure if that was like you had to dress up beforehand and register and say you're going to go there to dress up or whatever. Or, I don't know.
I think it's like unless you are, I don't know, like part of the exhibition or what have
Mm.
you. I think if you're just going there, it's like up to you. You can dress in your normal digs or you can dress up and fully go for it. And so, yeah, I was like, I was half tempted to be like, Mike, we're going to go dress up and then just let you turn up all dressed up as something and be like, yeah, I'm just wearing normal clothes. This is
That is
great.
like
But
a childhood fear. Like you go to a party, thinks dressing up, and then everyone's in a different pair of clothes. Oh, that's like a childhood fear of mine.
yeah, so it's like, I was going to say, it's like when it's a non-school uniform day and you turn up in uniform and you're like, oh, no, it's not a good one.
Yeah, I used to. Do you know what? Actually, I used to. I didn't. I used to get anxiety over non-school uniform day because I was
That
really
doesn't
just
surprise me.
self-conscious. I know, and I did self-conscious about what I was going to wear. Oh, it wasn't good times.
I think everyone was a bit like that at least. It's like in sixth form, you could pick your shirt and tie and stuff. And so that was a thing. Whereas I quite like just uniform, remove that element, at
Mm.
least at that time. But now
Me
I think
too.
I'd appreciate having some like ability to show a bit of personality or like a bit about me. I don't know how to put that into better words. Anyway, we've gone to quite a tangent here. I don't know if you had anything else, any thoughts surrounding the weekend.
Well, not really, but I did want to say this really segues really nicely onto just a short anime segment because I did want to talk a little bit about anime.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's do it early.
Like, because I have to say, I am in serious good bits with Naruto now. Like, we're into the pain set saga now.
Oh, boy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Uh, how can I put this? Yeah, where have you got to in that?
So
I'll let you do it versus me trying to like dig.
we've just got to the six Sarg mode of pain. So he's fighting
Okay.
Jiraiya,
Oh
and
god. Yeah, this is like peak.
yeah. So and do you know what? Even before I got to this bit, I was just it was going through all like the backstory of Jiraiya and like his development, and I just appreciated so much the development of his character because when he first came on the scene, he was kind of just like this goofy, pervy character. You didn't really get a glimpse into his powers or anything like that. And then you really like it took it through his whole backstory. Really got an appreciation for like his morals, his principles, and his journey. And I was like, oh my goodness, I like again, it just makes you fall in love with Jiraiya, and I'm like, I'm appreciating this so much. Um, yeah,
There's a reason he's my favorite character.
yeah,
So yeah, it's going to be an emotional ride for you, Mike. The next few episodes, it's going to be emotional.
Do you
Highs and
know?
lows and all of
Oh,
it.
literally tonight, I'm like, oh no, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm jealous of people who get to go through. I'm really jealous of you for Attack on Titan, like as an example, because there's just
yeah.
some moments in that that are just like your mind's like. So,
Well, do you know what? And again, it's funny you mentioned this because weirdly, I've been listening more to Attack on Titan music in the
oh yeah, the
gym.
music's great.
Yeah, and I've been loving it, and it's really got me amped for just watching Attack on Titan because we watched the first few episodes when we were in New York, so I already kind of half into it a little bit, and this music has just really invested me in into wanting to watch it. So like, yeah, oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I'm in a similar position with my anime at the moment where I haven't been able to get the time to like put towards it. In fact, what have I been watching? It's a bit of it's not like a joke anime, but it's because once I've like I taught you through my evening routine, once I've kind of showered, changed, and I'm eating dinner, I'm like not in my office, and so I that's where I watch most anime would be when I'm sat here, and so I typically on the weekend is when I watch some versus during the week. Whereas Netflix, so we have Netflix downstairs on the TV, and it does have some anime, and it has Mashal, which is just a bit of a anyone who's watched it, it's like a Harry Potter like esque like kind of it's almost a bit One Punch Man like because it's a bit of a joke.
Mm,
So basically, there's a guy. He has no magic, but he's really strong and like fast. And so he goes to like a magic school, and they don't know that he doesn't have magic, and he kind of makes up for that through his physical prowess. But it's like he's like One Punch Man in that he's like invincible to some extent.
mm,
It seems like, but I am enjoying it. It's quite a fun kind of anime on there. So yeah, that's the one I've been watching alongside Hunter Hunter, which I'm in the final arc now. Which I freaking love Hunter x Hunter. It's got so much good stuff. And on that note, I'll finish with this. Someone actually asked on my and I'll probably reply to it at some point, but in my Q&A on my personal
mm.
on the Instagram, they asked like, "What's the next anime tattoo?" I actually applied to Simon Cabell. He's a tattoo artist over in Liverpool. He did the artwork, which people might be able to see. I don't know if I think Riverside cuts it out, but
Mm.
people who might know, I have some artwork on my wall, and he did those pieces. So I've applied for a Killua piece. He's one of the main characters in the show on my calf. We'll see if he selects me because basically, if he doesn't let you know, then you didn't get selected. I have
Okay.
applied before, like last a couple of years ago, and I didn't get selected. But I'm going to see if I do this time. It's a bit of a like lottery in a sense.
Can you just keep applying? Like, how often do slots become available?
He works. Different artists have different approaches. He works by booking every quarter, I think. So basically he'll book out January, February, March, and then he'll open his books for April, May, June, and then
Okay.
he'll so on and so forth. So he'd like block 3 months at a time, but he's inundated with people wanting tattoos. Like he is
Mm.
he the most famous and well known tattoo artist in the UK for sure.
Huh.
And in worldwide for anime tattoos, he's probably in the top 5, I would imagine. I don't know for sure, but
Wow.
he's right up there with like the best of the best. So
Wow. How long has he been in the industry for?
no idea.
Yeah. Really?
No idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Probably
just.
decade.
Yeah. Because it just makes me think. Like, yeah. I wonder how long it took him to get to that point of being inundated and top 5 in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those. So yeah, I'll be interested to see if I get that. But let's I guess the other segue we're going to come to is we
Mm.
mentioned at the start there. I don't know how I got to it. Oh, Dom, who came to our last Revive get together. We're just talking off air about organizing another one. So basically, we're putting this out on here to see interest. So you can either DM me or Mike over on Instagram, or you can drop a comment in the comment section. Just let us know if you're interested in coming probably to London for some sort of get together where I've already kind of mapped out how I believe a day might go for us, where we might do a training segment where you get like 2 hours of training. Me and Mike will kind of take you through that. We've previously trained with people, but I think it might be cool to train people, kind of train the people who are coming, have a bit of a break for lunch, hopefully the Tesco Express that's near to the place that we normally rent out is open. But have some lunch and then come back for maybe a couple of hours, maybe a 45-minute presentation by both of us, open Q&A, and then go out for dinner. That's kind of a way of I'm thinking the day might go. So if people are interested and they have any comments surrounding they'd love the training, but they just want to do a training day, or they love the idea of what I spoke about, they'd love the educational pieces there in the Q&A, or they just love a day of like just seminar, like Q&A through and education through Revive Stronger. Yeah, let us know if there's any interest there. Obviously, it's open to our clients for sure, and we've mostly just invited clients, but there's definitely room to open this out to a wider audience if the demand is there.
Definitely. Yeah, completely echo that. And again, also let us know if you're interested in, us talking in terms of a Q&A or specific educational topics. What topics might you be interested in?
Yep.
Again, we can talk fairly varied because obviously, again, I've got a bit of a physio background as well. So if there was anything surrounding injury, returning to the gym and anything to do with that as well, in addition to your general training and nutrition topics as well, then hey, we can probably cater to that as well.
Did I say we're aiming for May?
Yes.
Yeah. So that people have some notice. And what I imagine we'll do is maybe put out 3 topics for you, 3 topics for me, and get people who are coming to pick. Like we'll probably have, like, I'm thinking in my head, an early bird price. So people will get a bit of a cheaper price. They then can indicate what they want us to present on. So we have some time to be able to develop it. And yeah, I think I love the seminars and I love the kind of educational pieces and mostly getting people together. And we've missed that through not having the RP guys coming over the last years. So I think we can kind of fill that gap a little bit, fill that void by doing a summer and winter, or summer and Christmas kind of Revive get together. And we will still have some client only ones at some point coming again. But I just want to put some feelers out, see what people are, if people are like interested.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, anybody listening to this, get involved, guys. Just drop a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And there's so much value from, just coming to these sorts of things, meeting other people, interacting with us. Sometimes you get, you might see someone like yourself, Steve, or whoever, and it's like you think these people are larger than life when actually, hey, we just really love connecting with you and we really love helping you as much as possible. So yeah, the biggest, best thing you can do is just reach out to us.
Yeah, the networking is so valuable. Like, it's one thing coming and getting the education and meeting like like us and kind of having that element, but it's the people you network outside of that. There's like true friendships that have grown and also opportunities that have grown out of these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely wouldn't discount them. I think it's a bit of money and time and that sort of investment, but it ultimately it could propel you forward. So I definitely think they're worthwhile, especially in this day and age now where it's becoming less and less like social, like the online side's taking over and that personal side is dying a little bit. Kind of drawing that back, I think, is going to be great. So yeah, I'm very interested in that. Mike, have
Mm.
you got any personal updates this week, or just
No.
so we'll do a
So
quick segment on that and then we have a number of questions to get to.
yeah, so I'll just quickly say that I obviously finished my refeeds last time because last time we spoke, I was kind of in the middle of my refeeds, went really well, energy picked up a treat, and so back into kind of pretty much full training. But all that we've done now is rather than my normal 1 refeed per week, we're going to just keep it to 2, just to kind of keep things down at a slow pace. But otherwise, things are going smoothly my end, so it's all good.
Have you already checked the menu at Uzumaki?
Yes.
You have.
Like
It doesn't.
like
Have you?
2 or 3.
Do you know what you're gonna get?
Pretty much, yes.
What's it gonna be? Is it the chicken ramen?
It I don't think it was the uzumaki ramen, I think.
That might be pork.
Yeah, with the pork. I might go because it's my refeed day, so I
Yep.
might just go for it. And then maybe there was like these rice ball starter things. They looked really appealing, so I might consider that with the pork ramen.
I haven't looked at the menu yet. I had the chicken ramen last time I went. I think the pork will be better. I try and avoid pork for
Mm.
various reasons, but I do want to try something different this time round. So I need to check the menu and check the sides. And I'm also going to check some reviews to see what people say, because that's something I've learned is like you can go onto like Google and people will be like, you have to have this. And like if 20 odd plus people have said they're the thing to get, I'm like, okay, so long as they're like not stupid calories, I'll definitely go for that. So I'm
That's a
excited for
really
that
good
one.
shout. And I remember when we were in New York, again, you'd look at restaurants or coffee shops and it's like, right, what do the reviews say? And it's a thing I don't naturally think about, but it's such a good thing to do.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. In some cases it's good, and then sometimes you're like, but do I trust all these
Yeah.
people? If there's a wealth of reviews, though, typically it's a pretty surefire way not to be disappointed. So that's exciting. I'm glad. Yeah, that's all going smoothly for you. You'll finish up this diet in not too long now, which is great. Get into some nice slow gaining again, and we're going to be on basically the same page there. The
Yeah.
only change for me is actually my basically, as I said last time, pretty much fully recovered at that like lower end settling point. My I seem to be really hovering around maintenance. If you look at my rate of gain, it looks static for the last 2 weeks. I've sat around the same weekly average. So I think I am going to have to bump food up. But I just want to take it nice and slow when I'm just being conservative with it, just taking a little bit of a different approach. So I am considering, and this is actually thanks to Cliff, just adding in one refeed day. I know it sounds weird in an off season to have a refeed day, but what I found was I liked having that refeed day because it just kind of almost gave me an excuse to try different stuff and just to have that extra allowance to
Mm.
do something and eat something that I normally wouldn't, rather than always being a bit restricted. It's kind of like having a free meal in an off season, but still within like constraints versus just
Mm.
having a free meal and going like wild. So yeah, I'm thinking about adding in it's like a 300 calorie jump above where I'm at. So I'm around 3,300 calories, and then I'll have like a 3,600 calorie day. And just an extra 300 calories, I can basically have my normal meals, and then whatever that meal just gets replaced by a meal out, and then I don't have to worry about it so much. So, and then that adds like 50 calories or less to my weekly average, and it's like, oh, that's a nice way to get a little bump. So I'm thinking about doing that.
Definitely. I really like that just because, again, it's not like a cheat day because you've literally planned and accounted for it. And you can combine it with something very sociable and make it very enjoyable. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really good example, I think, of how we can, again, use bodybuilding to fit our lifestyle a little bit better in some respects. And again, we've got to be mindful for some people who might still have, maybe some disordered eating around food, or maybe kind of behaviors where, they do have a tendency to that kind of maybe bingy type thing. You know, maybe not a great example there, but for someone like yourself, where you're very much in tune and in control with everything, like, I think it's such a great example of how we can use those things to our advantage.
Structured flexibility, I would call it. It's like
Exactly.
that sort of way of thinking. Cool. So we'll get to some questions.
Let's go.
So these, again, for those listening who aren't in my hyperbolic time chamber over on Instagram, if you've got Instagram, join the time chamber, which is I forget, it's like a broadcast channel. You can see it if you go to my profile and you're on your phone at least. And you can come and join. It's just, I don't spam you. I just drop things in there now and then, like links and things that I don't want to put my story because Instagram kills your reach. So, but I don't spam you or anything. I don't try and sell you on stuff all the time. But I do ask for questions, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions.
Oh,
So we've
awesome.
now got about half an hour to get those done. So I think let's start with the top one. So this is from Keeping Up with John. He asked, based on MR's protein paper, is that MR?
Martin Ruffalo?
Okay. Okay, yes. He was on that with Eric Helms, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It was protein during a calorie deficit, basically. So he said, how much protein would you recommend in contest prep for older individuals, and the minimum fat and carb amounts?
So because have you seen the paper, the meta-regression?
I
Or is
have
that,
I have not read it,
I haven't read it either. I've only
but I've
listened.
spoken to Helms about it,
Okay. I've
so that
only
helps.
listened to their podcast. Yeah. I've only listened to the podcast where they talked about it. And from my understanding, they give recommendations for like, hey, if this is your kind of, if this fits you and the type of person that you are, we'd recommend this or that. So I think that's great. And stop me at any point, Steve, if I'm maybe speaking wrongly, but generally we know that as you age, your MPS response goes down a little bit. Is that correct?
Typically, yeah, you get a bit
Typically,
of, what's the word?
you're insensitive.
Yeah, anabolic resistance. That's the
That's
word I
right.
was going for. Now I sound smart.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got, so anabolic resistance increases as we get older. So my thought would be, hey, probably and again, I haven't seen the recommendations, but my thought would be like, hey, if you're an older individual, let's say 50 plus, that, probably the protein intake would be slightly higher than someone who would be in their 20s or teens, for example. And again, that probably skews one way or the other, depending on, what your goals are. If you're kind of a master's level bodybuilder, 50 plus bodybuilder, the leanness, where you are in your diet phase. So again, I think that, yeah, I think the recommendations would slide depending on where you found yourself and where that person's goals would be.
Kind of the thought that comes to mind is it's somewhat similar to vegans, where because of a slightly, not due to anabolic resistance, but due to having a slightly lower quality, if we put it in those terms, or like digestibility, amino acid profile of vegan proteins, to make up for that, you might just have a bit more quantity, which is quite
Yeah.
often why vegans might struggle a bit more in a comp prep, because you have to have a bit more of that, and then there's more calories associated with vegan proteins because plants tend to have fiber and carbohydrates and maybe some tag along fats and more than animal proteins. But anyway, in a similar instance, so I'd agree with that. And he said, so in terms of protein,
Ah,
so do you have an amount? So protein you would recommend for contest prep for older individuals? You just say based off the paper and just maybe a slight bump, or to
yeah,
more skew it towards the higher end of their range of recommendation.
exactly.
I can't actually remember the range of recommendation off the top of my head, but I don't think it really changed from your general rules of thumb of like, hey, 1 to 1.2 grams, like during a dieting phase.
Yeah.
Maybe it was slightly over 1.2 that they saw, because I think there was no like cap to the benefit, but it's like, you can't just have infinite amounts of protein. You got to have enough, where he came onto it, fat and minimum carbs. So I don't know if you have any rules of thumb or ideas on minimum fat and carbs.
Yeah. So, and I think if I'm right in speaking this, from a, so generally kind of rule of thumb is, fats around 20% of total caloric intake, roughly speaking. And we're going,
I was just going to say, that's what most, I don't love that recommendation, but that is what most like papers will come to, in terms of they will come to 20% of total calories. It seems like a very safe way to go. I just always think about the fact that protein is set to body weight, and I don't know why fat wouldn't be either, if it's like an essential, like it's kind of set to body weight too. But I don't know of any papers or research that's looked into an amount of fat per like kilogram of body weight. So it's tough. So that 20% is a really good rule of thumb, I'd say.
I think at least it maybe gets you in the rough ballpark. At least that's what I think. If there's someone I know nothing about whatsoever, I might, unless they give me previous information, I might just say, right, we're going to start here, but then I'm gonna probably change it based off of your response, your preferences, and where we are, in the context of your goals. And then again, if we're, again, this is a very probably plain example, but because I think Eric Trexler on Mass, he a while ago he did a big sort of topic, a lot of articles and a podcast around minimum fat intakes, and from, if I remember correctly, he said that for a very very short period of time, it's okay for fats to get relatively low, but it has to be for a very short period of time. So probably generally speaking, we'd say, right, we probably don't want, for the average individual, we don't want fats to dip below 40, 30, 40 for too long. We probably can, but not for very long. But after that, we probably, again, depending on the individual, the size, etc., we probably want to be keeping fats to above 40, maybe.
Yeah, I have the like I kept the notes from that, because this is the first time I've ever seen anyone actually look into it, because I don't think it's very well known. I know Broderick Chavez, for example, has talked about basically you can get the amount of fats you need from licking a sticky note, is basically the way
Hmm.
he said it. But again, you have to think about the context of the people he's speaking to. They're normally enhanced, and so they're able to inject various hormones to keep
Mm.
those up. Whereas we need essential fatty acids, and for a variety of reasons, for the vitamins, minerals they're going to provide, but also for hormone production. It's like you said, that kind of 40 as the lower end for testosterone seems to be a good kind of ballpark. So I tend to say, hey, if you can keep it 40 at the lowest and try not to go below there, great. Like you said, there might be times you have to navigate below that. And Eric said 20 to 30 grams to be the longer term for essential fatty acids. So if you have to go low, try not to go under 20 grams. I can't imagine many cases people are going for a long time going below 20 grams. It's just not
Mm.
very practical.
No, exactly. And yeah, it's not practical. And I think, yeah, nothing much to add there.
So I think, yeah, generally, like, think about 20% of your total calorie intake. 40 grams is like a lower limit. If you have to go below there, don't go below 20, especially for like extended periods of time. And you can kind of, I often find, I don't know if you know this, have seen this with clients, Mike, but clients will often indicate if they feel a bit better on slightly higher fats or lower. I don't think you can really know that in an off season. I think you're just so
No.
overwhelmed with macros that you just can't tell higher or lower fat, like whatever. But in a prep, when you are very depleted, you often can feel some of those smaller changes a little bit more. Just you're a bit more transparent at that point.
Mm.
So sometimes your client can indicate to you if they're kind of feeling a bit off with that. And then in terms of carbs, at least my rule of thumb for carbohydrates is 2 grams per kilo is like a lower end minimum based off my reading of things. And I often people are on higher than that, but I think for an extended period of time, not going below 2 grams per kilo is a good kind of rule of thumb.
Definitely. Because again, we've got to remember that carbs are our primary fuel source. And again, as we get leaner, those carbs become very important. So we've got to protect them to a certain degree as best that we can while still trying to achieve a goal.
Yeah, at that point in prep, you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul at like various moments where you're like, I could have a bit more fat, but that means I have less carbs. But that means like the knock on effects. Because I even think that with the protein, it's like, yeah, people might read that research and be like, oh, wow, like I just get more and more effect from more protein, similar to like volume. I get more and more effect. But it's like, at what point is that higher volume taking away from other things that are leading to muscle
Mm.
growth? At what point is that high protein intake taking away from your carb or fat to a point where you're now in a poorer position? You're less well fueled, put it that way. Because I have even seen, I think it's Jeff Alberts. He doesn't run that higher protein during his preps. I think he even goes below a gram per pound.
Mm.
Don't quote me on that, but I'm almost certain he has, and he's in his 50s now,
Yeah.
and so like he's clearly prioritizing maybe higher carbs. That's going to promote better performance. Better performance is going to promote better muscle retention, and that's actually more important than protein. So it's a careful balancing act. It's a tightrope when you're in prep.
Totally. And what you made me think there is again, it's always remembering there is no free lunch. Like you said, it's right. If you want more of something, it's gonna take away from something else. You can't have something for free. And so you might say, oh, more protein is better. I'm gonna have more protein and also satiates me a little bit. Whereas like, well, if that's taking away from carbohydrates and then you can't perform as well in your sessions, sure, uh, maybe a bit of short-term satiety, but performance is key.
Yeah,
And everything that you mentioned there with Jeff, applies as well. So you've got to kind of remember those principles and remember, hey, there's no free lunch.
absolutely. Cool. Let's get to
Let's
the
go.
second question. Otherwise, we won't get through these.
Yeah.
I haven't actually read these ahead of time, by the way. So this one is from NJ Garavag. Galia. Sorry, I'm terrible at names, so I shouldn't be the person saying these. What might you do differently if you were just Gen Pop, looking for a very aesthetic physique and not necessarily a comp bodybuilder?
Hmm. Do you know what? I think in terms of where I'm at right now, do you know what? There isn't much I would do differently because essentially, in some respects, I am a bit of a Gen Pop because we're staying above my lower end threshold point. Um, so in some respects, my what I would do would not look a lot differently. I would be going through periods of muscle gain where I'd want to be in a surplus. Then once I got up to a certain body weight, I'd then probably drop back down to a comfortable range where I was lean to the point where, I looked good and I was happy, but not so low that, I start to suffer and it's below my lower intervention point. That, and I would just stay there basically. And then I just wouldn't have periods where I would go into a prep phase. That's the only thing that would be different for me personally.
Would you invest any less into it though? Would you
Um,
train less days, do less volume, be
I
less
th-
concerned about, I don't know, being on top of your macros and that sort of thing,
yeah,
or sleep?
great question. And do you know what? It's so hard to answer when you've been a certain way for so long. You think, would I? I think, I think probably I would. I think, not maybe training less days for sure, so that I had more of the weekend free to do whatever I liked. Not, you know, again, probably not being as worried about, hey, if I was traveling to X place, is there a gym nearby? Do I take protein powder with me? Those sorts of things. Probably some of those small things I'd probably learn to let go of and just say, like, hey, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter so much.
It's funny you came to that. It's hard for you to answer because that's where I come to with this question, where I have been doing this level of dedication really for the last 15 years. Like I've been super duper dedicated to the process, like all in, trying to gain everything from it. I very rarely went under 6 days per week training for the last 15 years. I've virtually always done that and tracked my macros most of that time, had some sense of understanding of that. Being aware of my sleep has only made me want to prioritize it more. There was a time where I didn't,
Yeah.
but I just wasn't as like on top of it. And so slowly every element that makes me a better bodybuilder, I've fallen more and more in love with and wanted to do. So it wasn't that I knew of those things earlier and didn't want to do them. It was just I wasn't aware that like sleep was as big a deal as it is. It just wasn't as abundantly obvious. But yeah, I'm so detached from being quote unquote gem pop. I just find I can't give an honest answer to it.
Mm,
I really, really struggle. So I definitely can think of, like you said, maybe in theory I would train less days or be less invested and so on and so forth. But like you said at the start, really the only fundamental difference is I wouldn't diet down to contest levels of leanness.
yeah.
Because even when I look at my physique, like I love, like when I think about my calf growth, like you might think, oh, I wouldn't train calves because who cares about calves when you're Gen Pop? But I like having big calves. Like, they make me feel good. Like I like wearing shorts and being like, hey, I actually have some calves. No one else notices, for God's sake, but I do.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like, yeah, I want my quads. I've always wanted my quads to be bigger. I don't care about my arms getting bigger. So I wouldn't be like, oh, yeah, I just make my arms ridiculously huge because they're what you see in a shirt or a t-shirt or whatever. It's like, actually, I don't know how much of my training and nutrition and everything would change. I'm so far removed from it. I literally, I'd be making up an answer at this point.
But it's what we enjoy as well. It's like, and we've managed to make it enjoyable and part of our lives. So it's like it doesn't necessarily take away from our enjoyment of things. We can make it work in a good way. And we find like the benefits of what we do makes us better people and it makes us enjoy life more because by sleeping more, we feel better. So we can be better people. We can be more empathetic. Whereas if we slept like rubbish all the time, we'd probably be grouchy, grumpy, moan at things more. So like it makes us better people and makes us enjoy life more. And again, like the more we learn about this, the more we get better at just living life, but still being able to reach our goals. So, like, we'll happily say, like, probably to a certain extent, both of us have goals to travel a bit more, to go to different places. And we know that if we wanted to, we could make it work. It's just we need to practice doing it a bit more. So, and that's just another example of how, you know, it doesn't really change what we do.
Yeah, it's when I come back to this thought, just as a final, is like the way I view bodybuilding and the way I coach bodybuilding is it should complement your lifestyle. So the only element that we therefore remove, because we view everything we're doing as complementary, is the actual competing side. Otherwise, you'd just be like,
Yeah.
wouldn't like, that's the only thing. So yeah, at the moment, maybe I'll say this. This might be okay. This gives a little bit someone something. Tattoos. I might go a little bit more in. I would have probably got a whole sleeve.
Mm.
To be fair, I probably would have done that on one side, whereas I am consciously holding back on doing those sort of things because I don't want them to hurt me to a significant extent on stage.
Mm.
So that's about the only thing, though. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, and yeah, the only other thing that crossed my mind was maybe I'd dabble a bit more in like maybe some strength stuff as well. Like maybe I'd keep in like some barbell lifts or something like that. But again, I'm not fussed about it anymore. But that's something which, if I had absolutely no bodybuilding aspirations whatsoever, that's probably I'd probably maybe dabble a bit more with training.
I think it's actually a really good point too, is for people listening. And if they think, oh yeah, I would, I'm a competitor, but I would significantly change how I'd go about my day to day if I was a Gen Pop, I would question what you're doing,
Mm.
because it's not going to be sustainable if it's something that you're not loving, that like lots of it. But if you are loving it, then it's great. I think so. Let's get to the next question.
Let's
Otherwise, we
go.
will not cover them. Depending on, I don't know how extensive these questions are, but this one is from Gallimard, and they asked: big day today, weight fluctuation, 1.5 kilos sometimes. How to know when to adjust calories on a bulk? Just average it and don't worry. So I think we basically covered this previously, didn't we? Last week.
I thought we covered this last week
Was it okay? Maybe it was exactly the same question.
because
So yeah, go
yeah.
reference that episode if you haven't. We'll get to the next one. So this is Lifting Lewis 5. What foods do you have to be wary of consuming too much, given you enjoy it / the high calorie content? Yeah, is there anything that you're particularly wary of, Mike, in your diet where you're like, oh, I could end up eating too much of this, or yeah, anything like that?
The only thing that's coming to mind are sometimes cereals like granola, because I'm a big cereal fan, and granola does tend to be very high calorie content, and I could pile that stuff away. So particularly if I had it with like milk or a protein shake. So I would say that's the only food in my day to day which I would, if I had it a lot, I would have to just be careful of. I have to moderate that. But apart from that, um, yeah, maybe kind of more milky chocolate would be the only other thing. But that's day to day the only thing that I'd probably have to monitor.
Have you ever binged before, Mike?
Probably, I don't
I
think
think
so.
if you're
No,
having to think that hard, you
no,
haven't.
no.
Nor have I. So again, this is one of those things where I'm like, there's nothing. There's things I think about, of course, and I consider it. For example, me and Charlotte just this last weekend went to Pereza, which I highly recommend, by the way. It's a vegan pizza place, but stay with me. The pizza was some of the best pizza I've ever had, honestly. And I wouldn't have known it was vegan apart from the pepperoni on the pepperoni pizza was quite obviously not real pepperoni. So otherwise, it was better. And I think I said this to you, Mike. It was better than Pizza Pilgrims, which we went to.
Mm.
It was definitely better than that. The base, the tomato, the toppings were great. The cheese, yeah, I mean, if I didn't know, I don't think I'd have noticed that it was vegan. But yeah, maybe because I knew it didn't quite have the texture of normal cheese, but it tasted amazing. Anyway, so me and Charlotte went there, and just there I moderate, where it's like, oh, we could have a starter, could have a main, could have a dessert, and have one each. But it was like, neither of us need that. So we both got a pizza and then we shared a dessert. If I got my own dessert, that's where calories really get out of control, I find, is like eating out and again having like starter, main, and dessert and not sharing any of that. That's where it can quickly out of control. Or if you get, I don't know, I think it's eating out in general. Like
Mm.
if you get not just a main and you start getting sides, you start getting a starter, you start getting dessert, maybe you have calorific drinks and beverages with it, the calories just rack up really quickly, which is partly why, back to my initial of like having that refeed and just giving me a bit more calorie allowance for such things, so that I can enjoy a little, maybe those events a bit more freely and not feel constrained as much. Because a meal out, you're going to be hard pressed to eat less than 750 calories,
For sure.
very easily 1,000 to 1,500, and you could quite comfortably go to 2,000 plus. And that's where I think it can get out of control. And sometimes I'm just aware that I'm holding back in those scenarios, but it's not like like I said, I've never binged, so it's nothing that I have a problem with.
Yeah. And I think just the only final thing I'll just add to that is I think the double tough thing about eating out is the social environment as well. Because if you're on your own, you could probably moderate things quite easily. But when you're with other people, it's the not only the psychological effect with being with friends and family, and it kind of just you want to be a bit more liberal, but you're not aware of what's going on. You're thinking about the other person, what they're talking about, and not focusing on necessarily the meal in front of you or the drinks that you're having. And again, because you're not mindful or present, you're just not focusing on how much you've had, and then like you said, it just gets out of hand.
Yeah, so that's the answer to that one. We've got 10
Yep.
minutes left. I
Let's
don't know why
go.
I'm giving us like a limit of an hour, but because theoretically this could go as long as we like, but I think people are probably sick of us after an hour. Let us know in the comments if you'd like longer episodes, though. So then we have a question from Dr. Jared Rice. So this is actually a previous client of mine who had crazy fat loss progress. Like he got into amazing shape and then found the next step of getting into even better shape a bit more challenging, which is very normal. Then he said, unique client experiences or creative strategies to approach a challenging client or difficult situation. What makes a good, okay, this is a separate question, I think. What makes a good/bad client? So have you got any unique challenges or experiences with clients?
I think the only thing that's popping to my mind, and it's not really unique, I think it's just where I've been able to incorporate a little bit of physio work into what we've been doing. So, for example, like with one client, we were noticing that when they were doing lunges and more single leg movement patterns, that they weren't really able to create much stability on their own, and their kind of hips were a little bit all over the place. And so we were able to incorporate some more kind of rehab based movements into that. And likewise, other clients who've had maybe past injuries or actually, and I've got one client at the moment where their goals have actually are not so physique based, and so actually we're starting to incorporate more body weight movements and again maybe some strength movements in there as well. And so that's been something different where again we're not pigeonholed into bodybuilding or purely body comp. It's actually just more general things there. So I'd say those are some unique things that I've been doing differently recently.
So I imagine if I look through all my clients, I'd find so many examples of this. But one I have at the moment that I'm going through is someone who came to me in a position of being underfed, basically overactive, step count of like 25,000, not feeding themselves, and therefore their sleep was poor too because of the amount of time they're having to put towards steps. Like getting 25,000 steps plus a day when you're working a full-time job is incredibly challenging. So he was kind of burning the candle at every single end. And so what we've been doing is slowly decreasing steps, increasing food, monitoring training performance, taking body weight measurements and circumference measurements. But it was becoming hard for him to embrace the process, and he was getting very focused on the scale. So we actually removed the scale after about a month in. We just removed it, and it's been out of our we haven't been monitoring body weight for like the last month. And so we've been relying on how's performance going in the gym, how subjective measures. We've been taking a weekly waist measurement to kind of get a proxy for body fat accumulation. And that seems to be working much better for him. And we're also at a point where we've got his food up to a point where we're very happy with it. And rather than giving him more food, we're continuing to encourage steps coming down. So we've slowly reduced him from like 25,000. And now I don't know how long we're into things, but maybe it's 2 months or so. And we're down to trying to get him below 17.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been hard. He hasn't been wanting to reduce them because obviously you come a bit attached to it and you get worried about fat gain. But slowly he's embracing kind of the bulking physique and the energy levels and everything that's bringing. His sleep is vastly improved because now all the time he was spending walking, he basically can put towards staying in bed. Training performance is going up. He's actually growing muscle tissue now, and his subjective markers, so something I monitor in addition in terms of a unique approach, typically those diet fatigue factors that I kind of scale out of 5 in terms of food focus, libido, hunger, energy levels, that sort of thing, we're actually using for him because he was almost in like a comp prep under recovered state and REDS state, actually like relative energy deficit state. That happened last time. You need to turn your phone on silent before the podcast. Anyway, so yeah, we had that, and we've been monitoring that as well alongside. So making sure those are going up. So it's like, oh, even if body weight was going up, if those aren't improving, like body weight is going up a bit fast, but if those aren't improving, we need to get those up. So let's not pull back yet. And so we've managed to get them to a point where they're in a really good spot. We haven't reintroduced scale weight yet because I want to get him in a position where he honestly couldn't care less how much he weighs when he steps on that scale. I'm not convinced he's at that point yet. So that's one example where pretty unique situation where someone is put themselves basically in that relative energy deficit, not a competitor, but we have to take almost like it's not a reverse diet, but it's somewhat similar to what you might do in such a situation where we are reversing out. And it's been awesome to hear like how much better he's feeling, like subjectively, but also recognizing how attached many of us are to looking a certain way. And also it's funny because he would mention his face changing on a week-to-week basis and like, oh, it looks puffy or what have you. And it's funny because I was going through my recovery diet at the same time and I was noticing it in myself, but I didn't notice it in him. And when I talk to people about my face, they're like, yeah, you still look lean. And I'm like, oh, funny. We notice those things way more than anyone else. So it was a good reminder of that. Second part of that question was, what makes a good or bad client?
Yeah, so I don't really think there necessarily is a thing as a good or bad client necessarily. I think, I think the main things are things that we're always encouraging people to do is to always ask questions. I think also communication, I think's a great thing, because I think if you can maintain communication with a coach, then and we'd almost rather initially over communication is a little bit better than under communication, because if you go into radio silence and things are not going very well, then we can't help you. And so again, like over communication, ask questions, and then I think just it's really hard, but again, sort of in a way committing and trusting the process, because sometimes when you join a coach, they might get you to do things like what you said just there, Steve, with that client. It's like, right, we're not going to weigh in, or we're going to reduce the step count. That it can be really hard to do, and there is that resistance. Like consciously you don't want to resist it, but there are these subconscious barriers which you have to let go of and just put your trust in the coach and the process and just do that, and that there's that commitment. So I think those are traits that I would say that allow a client to be successful, and maximize the coaching process. But I wouldn't necessarily say that there is a good or a bad client as such.
I have a really easy answer for this.
Yeah.
So I was going to say my easy answer is like a genetic elite would be a good client and someone who a non-responder would be a bad client. That's a joke. That's not it. The differentiation for me for good or bad clients is basically not doing what I need them to be doing in terms of checking in and understanding the coaching process. So they check in late or they don't check in at all. That's a poor client. They don't fill out the data that I need in the spreadsheet. That's a poor client. If they have anything that's going on their end that is like they don't love part of the program, or they would like to have higher carbs and they're not communicating it to me, that's a bad client because they're going to feel disgruntled and not great about it. But it's like, if you just communicate that to me, like you were mentioning how important communication is, we can talk about it. We can make it. So if you have any questions, concerns, highlight them to me. If you don't, and you just hold on to them without data, I'm blind. Without your communication, I'm blind as well. So basically, a good client is anyone who they check in on time. Again, they embrace the process. They know what's required of them. They read the coaching handbook that we have when they sign up. They give me the data that I require. And if there's any part of the process that they don't enjoy or they're unsure about, they ask questions. And that's really the difference. The only other thing I would add is I will say, and you said about like successful traits. I think it's successful traits of a client, and also a good client is one that hangs around for quite a long time. So like we have a 3-month minimum sign up time because I think we just want to secure ourselves and also make sure that that person is invested into the process, knowing they have to do at least 3 months. But honestly, unless you're doing fat loss, you can't achieve a ton in 3 months, like especially muscle gain. I mean, some people could achieve quite a bit, but a lot of us, unfortunately, in 3 months as natural bodybuilders who are relatively well trained, it's going to take 6 months, a year. And if I can have a client for that length of time, not only do they give the time necessary to see the results, but the results get better because it's an iterative process. Neither me or Mike would admit to be able to create you the best program or have your macros and like understanding of you like 100% at first, but after every check-in, we're learning you better, learning your body better, getting a really good understanding of how to then navigate things and help you the best way possible. So yeah, being able to stick around for a long time and invest into the process makes you a very good client in my eyes too.
Well said, Steve.
Last question then.
Cool. We got it.
Wait, is there just one more?
Yeah.
It keeps logging me out first. So
it's
here we
from...
go. Okay, yes. You can read it if you've got it up there.
It is from my fellow physio across the Atlantic, Dr. James Johnson. He said, so any future plans for the Revive Stronger team? Any new projects or expected growth?
Actually, it really worked well that you asked me that, right? Because that's not a question for you, really.
Not really.
So we mentioned one thing. We want to do more Revive get-togethers. That's definitely something we want to do. Apart from that, there's just been some changes that people are probably aware of from like hearing us and talking about things. There's been some changes with kind of how things are going. I don't want to speak more than that on them, really. But apart from that, it's just kind of navigating that to see us kind of move forward. But I can't think of anything off the top of head, but definitely I want to do more in-person stuff, whether or not that is just Revive Stronger get-togethers and seminars and training group meetups, or even potentially, I don't know, it might be like a reach out to an Eric Helms. He's going to be in London and here we can get a seminar going. I'm not sure. Or even thinking about like Dr. Pack, Milo Wolf, they're in the UK, come together with them, do a seminar of sorts. That might be on the cards. I'm just throwing it out there. I haven't mentioned this to them, but I would love to do some more in-person things. And then I really want to continue to grow your roster and get you to it depends where you want to be. We haven't actually discussed and I guess you don't fully know where you want to be. I know you said you're not wanting to be full-time online coaching, so you'd have a certain cap at some point, but I'd like to get you closer to that. That'd be great. And I want to continue to build out my roster and get some more competitive clients as well, take them to stage. That's always something I'm looking to kind of get more experience in that realm. And but honestly, if people are just willing to commit to coaching, I don't really care if you're a competitor or not. I've had plenty of bad clients who were competitors who didn't do what I said in terms of like following the check-in process and things, which makes it challenging to really get a result. I'd much prefer a Gen Pop, to put it in those terms, client who's going to really commit to coaching. But yeah, there's no big changes, fundamental things. I don't know if you do have any thoughts on that question, Mike.
Yeah, and I think it was just to say, similar to yourself, I'd love to coach more competitive clients, and both from, whether it's, their first time stage or, doing multiple years, that's something which I would love to do. I'd find very rewarding as a natural bodybuilder myself to coach others. So I think that's just the biggest thing from my coaching perspective. And I think maybe from a physio perspective as well, I think also working with competitive bodybuilders as well. If there's a competitive bodybuilder that has an injury or just something else that maybe I can help them from a physio capacity, I think that would be something cool that I'd like to work towards in the future as well, and just pass that knowledge on. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. from me.
Yeah, I definitely have shifted a little bit in this perspective where I really, really wanted to work with competitors and again have like high success and that sort of things, like be a Cliff Wilson. But honestly, I get just as much enjoyment from a competitor who's committed to the process as someone who's non-competitive. So I'm honestly not too upset if I don't get tons more competitors. And in fact, I quite like not having too many because then I really can give them me. Whereas I can't imagine if I had a roster full of competitors, that would be overwhelming to like a huge level. And then, yeah, it's like I said, yeah, James, there's just some fundamental changes going on with Revive Stronger at the moment. So it's once that's happened and been kind of passed on, I'll be able to have a think about where I want us to go, if there is anywhere to go, because I'm quite happy with the team, but I could see expanding it. I'd love to be able to do that at some point, but I also don't want to expand before it's ready to do that sort of thing. So yeah, I can't think of anything like we're going to launch a group training program or X, Y, and Z or whatever it is. It's kind of more of the same in a sense, really, for the time being, at least.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that I would just add is, like you said, in terms of meetups and doing collaborations with people like Team 3DMJ, Eric Helms, Natty News, Milo Wolfpack, and I think that also we would love to do that, but obviously there's a financial element to that, and the biggest thing that we need is you guys to talk to us about it, give us the demand, give us the interest, and we can make it happen, but we depend on you guys who are listening.
Yeah, if you want Mike Israel to come over, give us the Lambo money. So I think on that note, actually, I've got Mike booked in for a podcast. He's coming in.
Hey.
He's booked in for April, I believe, because he's a busy man. So that's exciting. I don't know what we're going to talk about because I don't get to talk to him as regularly. So I need to make it a banger. It's always a banger with Mike. Anyway, I'm on a ramble, guys. Thank you so much for listening. As always, do make sure to subscribe. Got to share it if you're listening and tag myself and Mike. We always love to see those over on Instagram. And be sure to be following Mike if you're not at Mike Challis at Mike_Revive Stronger.
It's
all
all one
just
word.
Mike Revive Stronger?
Yeah, all one word. Mike Revive Stronger.
So anyway, and if you're not following me, I'll be very upset as well. So Revive Stronger, you'll find me. And guys, we'll talk to you in the next one. I apologize for this outro. There's no music. Actually, Mike, music. There we go. Cheers, guys. Did that pump you up, Dom? I hope it did. Take care.
Bye.